In the heart of every ambition, every dream, every pursuit of greatness, there lies a silent killer, one so subtle, so insidious, that it often goes unnoticed until it's too late. This killer is not an external force, not a competitor or a market crash, but something far closer to home, our own ego. Ego is the enemy, as Ryan Holiday so powerfully argues in his book of the same name, a force that can derail even the most promising journeys. It whispers in our ears, inflating our sense of self, blinding us to our flaws, and setting us on a path toward ruin. In the fast-paced world of startups, social media, and relentless self-promotion, ego has become a cultural epidemic, celebrated as confidence, but often masking a deeper fragility. Today, we'll explore why ego is the enemy, why it's so dangerous in the modern world, and how the timeless wisdom of Stoic philosophy can guide us to overcome it. Let's start with a question. Have you ever felt the sting of overconfidence? Maybe you launched a project certain it would succeed, only to watch it crumble under the weight of your assumptions. Perhaps you've scrolled through social media, comparing your life to the curated perfection of others, only to feel inadequate or, worse, entitled to more than you've earned. In the startup world, we see it all the time. Founders who believe their idea is infallible, who dismiss feedback as ignorance, who let their ego drive decisions that lead to spectacular failures. Social media amplifies this, rewarding arrogance with likes and followers, creating a feedback loop where ego grows unchecked. But as Ryan Holiday reminds us, ego is the enemy of what you want and of what you have. It's the enemy of learning, of growth, of resilience. And if we're not careful, it can destroy everything we've worked for. Consider the story of a young entrepreneur. Let's call her Sarah. She launched a tech startup with a bold vision, securing millions in funding and media attention. Her app was hailed as the next big thing, and she was the darling of the startup scene. But as her success grew, so did her ego. She stopped listening to her team, ignored market data that didn't align with her vision, and dismissed competitors as inferior. When her app failed to scale, she blamed everyone but herself: investors, employees, even the market itself. Within a year, her company folded, and Sarah was left picking up the pieces, wondering where it all went wrong. Her story isn't unique. It's a pattern repeated across industries, from Silicon Valley to Hollywood, from influencers to CEOs. Ego, unchecked, is a ticking time bomb. This is where Stoic philosophy offers a lifeline. The Stoics thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca understood the dangers of ego long before the age of social media or startup culture. They didn't call it ego, but they described it vividly: the tendency to overestimate our control, to cling to illusions of self-importance, to let our desires and emotions cloud our judgment. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher, wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." For the Stoics, the antidote to ego was humility, clarity, and a relentless focus on what we can control: our thoughts, our actions, our character. By grounding ourselves in these principles, we can navigate a world that often rewards arrogance with a quiet strength that endures. Why does this matter now? We live in an era where ego is not just tolerated, but celebrated. Social media platforms thrive on self-promotion, where the loudest voices often get the most attention. In the startup world, the myth of the visionary founder fuels a culture of overconfidence, where admitting weakness is seen as failure, but the cost of ego is steep. It blinds us to feedback, alienates those who could help us, and sets us up for inevitable falls. Ryan Holiday's Ego is the Enemy draws on these Stoic insights to show how ego undermines us at every stage of life, when we aspire, when we succeed, and when we fail. His book is a call to action, urging us to confront the enemy within before it destroys what we hold dear. Let's pause for a moment and reflect. Think about a time when your ego got in the way. Maybe you argued with a colleague because you couldn't admit you were wrong. Maybe you chased a goal not because it mattered, but because it fed your sense of importance. These moments, however small, reveal the power of ego to distort our perspective. The Stoics believed that true strength lies in recognizing these flaws and working to overcome them. Seneca, another Stoic philosopher, wrote, "There is no person so severely punished as those who subject themselves to the whip of their own remorse." Ego doesn't just harm our outcomes, it harms our peace of mind, trapping us in a cycle of self-justification and regret. This video is the beginning of a journey to tame the ego and embrace a Stoic approach to life. Over the next sections, we'll dive deeper into how ego operates at different stages, when we're striving for greatness, when we're basking in success, and when we're grappling with failure. We'll draw on stories of real people, some famous, some not, who faced the consequences of ego and those who overcame it. We'll also explore practical Stoic tools to keep ego in check. Tools you can apply today to live with more clarity and purpose. And at the end, I'll share a simple exercise inspired by Holiday's work to help you confront your own ego and take the first steps toward change. Before we move on, let me leave you with one more Stoic gem from Epictetus. It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Ego tells us we have all the answers, but true wisdom begins with humility. As we explore this topic, I invite you to approach it with an open mind, ready to challenge the parts of yourself that resist scrutiny. The enemy is within, but so is the power to defeat it. Let's begin. The journey to greatness is exhilarating. It's the spark of a new idea, the thrill of a bold vision, the hunger to make your mark on the world. But in this phase of aspiration, when we're climbing toward our goals, ego lurks as a dangerous companion. It whispers that we're destined for success, that our ideas are flawless, that we're above the rules others follow. Ryan Holiday, in Ego is the Enemy, warns that ego in the aspiring phase can sabotage us before we even begin. It blinds us to our limitations, alienates those who could help, and sets us on a path to self-destruction. Through the lens of Stoic philosophy, we'll explore how ego undermines our ambitions, share a cautionary tale of a famous figure undone by arrogance, and uncover Stoic principles to keep us grounded as we strive. Let's start with a story that captures the peril of ego in aspiration. The rise and fall of Elizabeth Holmes, the founder of Theranos. In the early 2000s, Holmes was a Silicon Valley prodigy. At 19, she dropped out of Stanford to launch Theranos, a company promising to revolutionize healthcare with a device that could run hundreds of blood tests from a single drop. Her vision was audacious, her charisma magnetic. She raised billions from investors, graced magazine covers, and was hailed as the next Steve Jobs. But beneath the hype, ego was at work. Holmes believed her vision was infallible. Dismissing scientists who warned her technology wasn't ready, she silenced critics, exaggerated claims, and built a cult of personality around herself. By 2015, investigations revealed Theranos' technology didn't work as promised. The company collapsed. Investors lost everything, and Holmes faced legal consequences. Her story is a textbook case of ego run amok, how the refusal to question oneself, to seek feedback, or to admit limitations can turn ambition into catastrophe. Why does ego thrive in the aspiring phase? When we're chasing a dream, we're vulnerable. We want to believe we're special, that our path is unique, that obstacles don't apply to us. Ego feeds on this, inflating our sense of certainty. In the startup world, this is all too common. Founders pitch their ideas with unshakable confidence, ignoring market realities or team input. On social media, aspiring influencers chase clout, crafting personas that prioritize image over substance. Ryan Holiday writes, "When we are aspiring, ego is the enemy because it wants us to be recognized, to be praised, to be the best. But this hunger for validation distorts our focus, pulling us away from the work itself and toward the spotlight." The Stoics offer a powerful counterpoint. They teach us to focus on what's within our control, our effort, discipline, our character, while letting go of external validation. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "Do your work with a whole heart and take pride in doing it well, but don't expect praise for it." For Marcus, the pursuit of greatness wasn't about being seen as great, but about doing the right thing, day after day, with humility. When we aspire, ego tempts us to skip steps, to overestimate our readiness, to crave recognition before we've earned it. The Stoic response is to stay grounded, to embrace the grind, to seek feedback even when it stings. Let's consider another example, less famous, but just as telling. Imagine a young software developer named Alex, working at a startup in San Francisco. Alex had a knack for coding and a vision for a groundbreaking app. He pitched it to his team, brimming with confidence, certain it would disrupt the industry. But when colleagues suggested improvements or pointed out flaws, Alex bristled. He saw their feedback as jealousy, their questions as ignorance. He pushed the app to market too soon, ignoring bugs and user testing. The launch was a disaster, crashes, bad reviews, and a swift decline in downloads. Alex's ego had convinced him he was above critique, but the market told a different story. His story mirrors countless others in the startup world, where ego turns potential into failure. What can we learn from these stories? Ego in aspiration often manifests as a refusal to learn. Holiday emphasizes that the greatest achievers are lifelong students, always open to growth. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus put it bluntly, "You cannot learn what you think you already know." When we let ego convince us we're above advice, we close ourselves off from improvement. In startups, this might mean ignoring user feedback or market data. In personal life, it could be dismissing a mentor's guidance or refusing to admit a mistake. The result is the same. We stunt our growth and invite failure. So how do we combat ego in this phase? The Stoics offer practical tools. First, practice humility. This doesn't mean self-doubt, but a willingness to question your assumptions. Ask yourself, what am I missing? Who can help me see this clearly? Second, focus on the process, not the outcome. The Stoics believed that true success lies in consistent effort, not in fleeting rewards. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have so little time, but that we waste so much of it by prioritizing the work itself, writing the code, refining the pitch, building the prototype. We build a foundation ego can't topple." Third, seek out feedback, even when it's uncomfortable. Surround yourself with people who challenge you, not just those who affirm you. As Holiday notes, the best feedback is often the hardest to hear. Let's reflect for a moment. Think about a time you were chasing a goal, a promotion, a project, a personal dream. Did ego creep in? Maybe you brushed off advice because you thought you knew better. Maybe you rushed ahead, chasing glory instead of progress. These moments reveal ego's grip. The Stoic path is to pause, to examine our motives, to ask, am I doing this for the right reasons? Or am I serving my ego? This self-awareness is the first step to breaking free. As we move forward in this journey, we'll see how ego doesn't just threaten us when we aspire, it can also destroy us at the peak of success. But for now, let's hold on to the Stoic wisdom that aspiration requires humility, discipline, and openness. Elizabeth Holmes's story, and countless others like it, remind us that ego can turn dreams into nightmares. But by embracing the Stoic mindset, focusing on what we control, staying open to learning, and letting go of the need for praise, we can pursue greatness without falling prey to the enemy within. Success is intoxicating. When you've climbed the mountain, when the world applauds your achievements, when your startup goes viral or your name trends on social media, it feels like you've cracked the code to life. But at this peak, when everything seems to be going right, ego becomes more dangerous than ever. It convinces you that you're invincible, that your success is permanent, that you're above the principles that got you there. Ryan Holiday, in Ego is the Enemy, warns that success is where ego thrives most insidiously, turning triumphs into traps. Through the lens of Stoic philosophy, we'll explore how ego undermines us at the height of success. Share a cautionary tale of a famous figure undone by arrogance and uncover Stoic wisdom to stay grounded when the world is at your feet. Let's begin with a story that epitomizes ego's destructive power at the peak. The fall of Icarus, reimagined in the modern era through the lens of Travis Kalanick, the former CEO of Uber. In the early 2010s, Kalanick was a rock star in the startup world. Uber, under his leadership, disrupted the transportation industry, growing from a scrappy startup to a global giant valued at billions. Kalanick was celebrated as a visionary, a disruptor who rewrote the rules. But success fed his ego. He began to see himself as untouchable, ignoring ethical concerns about Uber's aggressive tactics, dismissing regulators as obstacles, and fostering a toxic company culture. By 2017, a series of scandals, allegations of workplace harassment, data breaches, and questionable business practices eroded public trust. Kalanick was forced out by his own board, his legacy tarnished. Like Icarus, who flew too close to the sun, Kalanick's ego led him to believe he could defy gravity, only to crash spectacularly. Why is ego so potent at the peak of success? When we succeed, the world reinforces our self-image, praise, wealth, and status pur ein, and ego feasts on them. In the startup world, a successful founder might start believing their own hype, assuming every decision they make is golden. On social media, influencers with millions of followers begin to see themselves as infallible, chasing clout over authenticity. Ryan Holiday writes, "Success breeds complacency, and complacency breeds ego. The more we achieve, the easier it is to forget the hard work, luck, and help that got us there. We start to believe we're the sole architects of our success, ignoring the impermanence of fortune." The Stoics understood this trap intimately. They saw success as fleeting, a moment in the grand cycle of life that could vanish as quickly as it came. Marcus Aurelius, reflecting in his meditations, wrote, "All is ephemeral fame, and the famous as well." For Marcus, a Roman emperor at the height of power, success was not a destination, but a test. The Stoics believed that true strength lies in maintaining humility and discipline, even when the world crowns you king. They remind us that success is not ours to own. It's a gift, temporary and fragile, subject to forces beyond our control. Ego, however, convinces us otherwise, urging us to cling to status and glory as if they define us. Let's ground this in another example, closer to everyday life. Imagine Priya, a social media influencer who built a following of millions through fitness content. Her videos went viral. Brands showered her with sponsorships, and fans adored her. But as her fame grew, so did her ego. She began dismissing constructive criticism as hate, ignored trends that didn't align with her brand, and alienated her team by demanding constant validation. When a new platform emerged, Priya refused to adapt, believing her current success guaranteed her future. Within a year, her engagement plummeted, sponsors left, and her audience moved on. Priya's story shows how ego at the peak can blind us to change, making us rigid when we need to be adaptable. What can we learn from these stories? Success amplifies ego's voice, but it also amplifies the stakes. Holiday argues that the most successful people remain students of their craft, never assuming they've made it. The Stoics echo this, emphasizing the importance of staying anchored to principles over pride. Seneca, in his Letters from a Stoic, wrote, "No person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they don't have." At the peak, ego pushes us to want more fame, more control, more recognition. But the Stoic path is to focus on what endures: our character, our values, our actions. How do we combat ego when success tempts us to indulge it? The Stoics offer 3 key practices. First, practice gratitude. Acknowledge the role of others, mentors, teammates, even luck in your achievements. This keeps ego in check by reminding you that success is a collective effort. Second, embrace impermanence. The Stoics used memento mori, the reminder of death, to stay grounded. Success, like life, is temporary, so treat it as a moment, not a monument. Third, return to the basics. Revisit the habits and disciplines that led to your success, whether it's coding late nights, engaging with your audience, or seeking honest feedback. These fundamentals keep you tethered to reality. Let's pause and reflect. Think about a moment when you tasted success, a promotion, a viral post, a personal milestone. Did ego creep in? Maybe you started to believe you were better than others, or you stopped listening to those who challenged you. These are the moments ego thrives, whispering that you've arrived, that you're above the grind. The Stoic response is to double down on humility. Epictetus taught, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." At the peak, the willingness to learn, to adapt, to admit you're not perfect, is what sustains success. As we move forward, we'll explore how ego doesn't just threaten us in aspiration or success, it can also paralyze us in failure. But for now, let's hold on to the Stoic insight that success is not a crown to wear, but a responsibility to bear. Travis Kalanick's fall, Priya's decline, and countless other stories remind us that ego at the peak is a siren song, luring us toward complacency and ruin. By embracing gratitude, impermanence, and discipline, we can savor success without letting it define us. The Stoics teach us that true greatness lies not in what we achieve, but in who we become in the process. Failure is a universal experience, whether it's a startup that crashes, a project that flops, or a personal dream that unravels. We all face moments when things don't go as planned. These moments are painful, but they're also opportunities for growth, learning, and resilience. Yet, ego often stands in the way, turning failure into a deeper trap. It convinces us to deny our mistakes, blame others, or wallow in self-pity instead of rising again. Ego is the enemy. Ryan Holiday argues that ego is particularly destructive in failure, preventing us from accepting reality and moving forward. Through the lens of Stoic philosophy, we'll explore how ego sabotages recovery, share a story of someone who fell and struggled because of ego, and uncover Stoic tools to rebuild with humility and strength. Let's begin with a real-world example, the story of Adam Neumann, the co-founder of WeWork. In the 2010 second, Neumann was a startup superstar. WeWork, his co-working space company, was valued at $47 billion at its peak, with Neumann hailed as a visionary for redefining work culture. But behind the scenes, his ego fueled reckless decisions, lavish spending, questionable business practices, and a cult-like leadership style. When WeWork's 2019 IPO collapsed due to scrutiny over its unsustainable model, Neumann's empire crumbled. Instead of owning his mistakes, he deflected blame onto investors and the media, insisting his vision was misunderstood. His ego refused to accept the failure, delaying his ability to learn and adapt. Eventually, he was ousted, and WeWork's valuation plummeted. Neumann's story shows how ego can turn a fall into a freefall, preventing the clarity needed to recover. Why does ego make failure so hard to navigate? When we fail, our instinct is to protect ourselves. Ego steps in, whispering that we're not at fault, that external forces, bad luck, jaloux rivals, or unfair circumstances are to blame. In the startup world, a founder might point fingers at their team or the market rather than examine their own missteps. On social media, someone whose post flops might lash out at haters instead of refining their approach. Ryan Holiday writes, "Ego loves to play the victim in failure, but it's the last thing we need when we're down. By refusing to accept responsibility, ego keeps us stuck, unable to learn the lessons failure offers." The Stoics, however, saw failure differently. They viewed it as an inevitable part of life, a teacher rather than a punishment. Epictetus, in his discourses, said, "You have been given the opportunity to practice courage, to practice patience, to practice wisdom." For the Stoics, failure wasn't a reflection of your worth, but a chance to exercise virtue. They believed that what matters is not the event itself, but how we respond to it. Ego, by contrast, fixates on the event defending our image, preserving our pride, while Stoicism urges us to focus on our actions, the one thing we can control. This shift in perspective is what allows us to rise from failure stronger than before. Let's consider a more relatable example. Imagine James, a freelance graphic designer who landed a major client, a fast-growing startup. His designs were a hit, and he felt on top of the world. But when he took on a high-profile project, he overpromised, underestimating the timeline and complexity. The project failed to meet expectations. The client dropped him, and his reputation took a hit. Instead of reflecting on his mistakes, James's ego kicked in. He blamed the client for unclear instructions and his peers for not supporting him. Months passed, and James struggled to find new work, trapped in a cycle of resentment and denial. His story reflects a common truth. Ego doesn't just amplify the pain of failure, it prolongs it, keeping us from the self-examination needed to move forward. What can we learn from these stories? Failure exposes ego's fragility It tempts us to hide from reality, to cling to a false narrative rather than face the truth. Holiday emphasizes that the path out of failure is through honesty, acknowledging where we went wrong, learning from it, and taking action. The Stoics take this further, teaching that failure is not the enemy. Our reaction to it is. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment in failure. Ego amplifies our distress, but Stoicism gives us the power to reframe it, to see it as a chance to grow." How do we combat ego in the face of failure? The Stoics offer 3 practical strategies. First, practice self-reflection. Take time to honestly assess what went wrong, without excuses. Ask, what did I miss? What can I learn? This aligns with Holiday's advice to own your failures. Second, focus on what you can control. You can't undo the past, but you can control your next step, whether it's reaching out to a mentor, revising your approach, or starting anew. Seneca advised, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." Instead of dwelling on loss, channel energy into action. Third, cultivate resilience through detachment. The Stoics practiced amor fati, loving one's fate, embracing failure as part of the journey. By accepting setbacks without ego's resistance, we free ourselves to move forward. Let's pause and reflect. Think about a time you failed, a missed opportunity, a rejected idea, a personal setback. Did ego hold you back? Maybe you avoided admitting your role, or you let shame keep you from trying again. These are the moments ego thrives, convincing us to stay down rather than rise. The Stoic path is to face failure head-on, to ask what it can teach us, to let go of pride and embrace growth. As Holiday notes, failure shows us the way by showing us what isn't the way. As we continue this journey, we'll explore Stoic antidotes to ego, practical tools to keep it in check across all stages of life. But for now, let's hold on to the insight that failure is not the end. It's a beginning. If we can silence ego's voice, Adam Neumann's fall, James's struggles, and countless other stories remind us that ego in failure is a chain, binding us to the past. By embracing Stoic principles, self-reflection, control, and resilience, we can break free, turning setbacks into stepping stones. The Stoics teach us that failure is not a verdict on our worth, but an invitation to become better. We've seen how ego sabotages us at every stage, when we aspire, when we succeed, and when we fail. It's a relentless force, inflating our sense of self, blinding us to reality, and derailing our progress. But the battle against ego is not hopeless. The ancient Stoics, whose wisdom has guided emperors, philosophers, and everyday people for centuries, offer powerful tools to keep ego in check. In Ego is the Enemy, Ryan Holiday draws heavily on these Stoic principles, showing us how to cultivate humility, discipline, and clarity in a world that often rewards arrogance. In this section, we'll explore 5 Stoic antidotes to ego, practical strategies rooted in timeless philosophy, enriched with modern insights that you can apply today to live with purpose and resilience. The first Stoic antidote is self-awareness. Cultivated through honest reflection, ego thrives in the shadows, convincing us we're flawless or that our failures are someone else's fault. The Stoics teach us to shine a light on our thoughts and actions. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "Look within. Do not allow the special quality or worth of anything to pass you by. This means regularly examining your motives, your mistakes, and your progress. Are you acting out of pride or principle? Are you seeking truth or validation? Holiday echoes this, urging us to talk less, listen more, and be honest with ourselves. Try this. Set aside 10 minutes each evening to journal. Ask yourself 3 questions. What did I do well today? Where did I let ego take over? How can I improve tomorrow? This simple practice, rooted in Stoic self-examination, builds a habit of accountability. It's not about self-criticism, but about clarity, seeing yourself as you are, not as ego wants you to be. Ego loves to obsess over things beyond our reach, other people's opinions, external rewards, or the outcome of our efforts. The Stoics, however, teach us to focus solely on what we can control: our thoughts, actions, and responses. Epictetus put it starkly in his Enchiridion: there is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will. When ego pushes you to chase likes, status, or approval, redirect your energy to your work, your values, your character. In the startup world, this might mean focusing on building a great product rather than chasing media hype on social media. It's about creating authentic content rather than obsessing over metrics. Holiday advises, do the work. Let the results speak for themselves. When you anchor yourself to what's in your control, ego loses its grip, and you gain clarity to move forward with purpose. Humility is the cornerstone of Stoic philosophy and a direct antidote to ego. Ego tells us we're above others, that we deserve more, that we've already arrived. The Stoics saw humility not as weakness, but as a source of strength. Seneca wrote, "Every man, when he first sees light, is on a level with the common animals." This reminder of our shared humanity keeps us grounded no matter how successful you become. You're never above the basics: learning, listening, and improving. Holiday illustrates this with the story of John Boyd, a military strategist who shunned fame to focus on his craft, always seeking feedback and refining his ideas. You can practice humility by seeking out mentors, asking for honest feedback, and admitting when you're wrong. In a world that celebrates self-promotion, choosing humility is a radical act of strength that keeps ego at bay. Ego fuels our desires for recognition, wealth, or power, often leading us to shortcuts or compromises. The Stoics, however, valued discipline above all. Marcus Aurelius advised, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Discipline means sticking to your principles. Even when ego tempts you to chase fleeting rewards, it's about showing up every day, doing the work, and letting go of the need for immediate gratification. For a startup founder, this might mean iterating on a product instead of rushing to market for acclaim. For an individual, it's about building habits, writing daily, exercising consistently, or practicing patience that align with your values. Holiday emphasizes that discipline is a form of self-mastery, a way to quiet ego's demands and focus on what truly matters. The ultimate Stoic antidote to ego is amor fati, the love of one's fate. This means embracing everything that happens: success, failure, praise, criticism as necessary and valuable. Ego resists reality, insisting things should be different. But the Stoics teach us to accept life as it is. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together. But do so with all your heart. By loving your fate, you strip ego of its power to make you resentful or entitled." Holiday applies this to modern life. suggesting we see setbacks as opportunities to grow and successes as moments to stay humble. In practice, amor fati might mean accepting a failed project as a lesson or viewing criticism as a chance to improve. It's a mindset that transforms obstacles into allies, freeing you from ego's need to control the uncontrollable. Let's reflect. Which of these Stoic practices resonates with you? Maybe it's journaling to uncover ego's influence, or focusing on what you can control to quiet the noise of comparison. Perhaps it's embracing amor fati to face life's ups and downs with grace. These tools aren't just abstract ideas, they're actionable steps you can take today. As Holiday notes, the Stoics weren't philosophers in the sense of theorizing, they were practitioners solving real problems. By adopting these antidotes, you can build a life where ego no longer holds sway. As we approach the conclusion of this journey, we'll wrap up with a powerful exercise to put these ideas into practice. But for now, let these Stoic antidotes sink in. Self-awareness, control, humility, discipline, and amor fati are your weapons against ego. They're not easy to wield, ego will fight back, but they're proven by centuries of wisdom and the lives of those who've walked this path. The Stoics remind us that the enemy within can be tamed, not by force, but by clarity, purpose, and relentless commitment to becoming better. We've journeyed through the many faces of ego, how it sabotages us when we aspire, blinds us at the peak of success, and shackles us in the depths of failure. Ego is the enemy. As Ryan Holiday so aptly puts it, a force that thrives in the startup world, on social media, and in the quiet corners of our minds. It whispers that we're special, infallible, or entitled, leading us astray from the path of growth and purpose. But the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca offer a timeless antidote, a life of humility, discipline, and clarity, grounded in what we can control. As we close this exploration, let's reflect on the lessons we've uncovered, commit to taming ego, and take a practical step forward. With an exercise inspired by Holiday's work and Stoic wisdom, ego's danger lies in its subtlety. It's not always loud arrogance. Sometimes it's the quiet voice urging you to ignore feedback, to chase validation, or to cling to a false narrative. In Aspiration, we saw how Elizabeth Holmes's ego led Theranos to ruin by dismissing warnings and inflating her vision. At the peak of success, Travis Kalanick's story showed how ego turned Uber's triumph into a cautionary tale of hubris. In Failure, Adam Neumann's refusal to own WeWork's collapse prolonged his downfall. These stories, alongside everyday examples like Alex, Priya, and James, reveal a universal truth. Ego is a universal enemy, but it's one we can defeat. The Stoics teach us that the battle is won not through force, but through self-awareness, resilience, and a commitment to virtue. What does this mean for you? Whether you're a startup founder chasing a dream, an influencer building a brand, or simply someone striving to live better, ego is a force you'll face daily. The Stoics remind us that true greatness lies not in external rewards, but in who we become. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." This is the Stoic call to action, to live with integrity, to focus on your actions, to let go of the need for praise or the fear of criticism. Ryan Holiday echoes this, urging us to work for the sake of the work, not for the sake of the applause. Now, let's bring this home with a practical exercise. Inspired by ego is the enemy and Stoic principles. This exercise is designed to help you confront ego head-on, identify its influence in your life, and chart a path to overcome it. It's simple but powerful, requiring only a pen, paper, and honesty. Here's how it works. Reflect on 3 moments. Ego held you back. Set aside 15-20 minutes in a quiet space. Write down 3 specific moments in your life when ego got in the way. These could be times when you refused to listen to feedback, chased recognition over substance, blamed others for a failure, or let pride cloud your judgment. Be specific. Describe the situation, what you did, and how ego influenced your actions. For example, I argued with my boss because I couldn't admit I missed a deadline, or I posted content online to impress others, not because it was authentic. Analyze the consequences. For each moment, write down the outcome. How did ego's influence affect your relationships, your work, or your peace of mind? Did it lead to missed opportunities, strained connections, or prolonged setbacks? This step is about facing reality. As the Stoics urge, Epictetus said, "Don't be proud of what you have, but of what you do with it." By understanding ego's cost, you begin to loosen its grip. Plan your antidote. For each moment, write 1 actionable step you can take to counteract ego in similar situations. Draw on Stoic principles. Could you practice humility by seeking feedback? Focus on what you control by letting go of external validation. Embrace amor fati by accepting a setback as a lesson. For example, next time, I'll ask for my boss's perspective before defending myself, or I'll create content that aligns with my values, not what gets likes. These steps are your roadmap to a life less dominated by ego. Commit to action. Place your list somewhere, visible: your desk, your phone, your journal. Revisit it weekly to remind yourself of ego's patterns and your commitment to change. As Seneca advised, no person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they don't have. This exercise is a small but deliberate step toward that power. This exercise isn't a one-time fix. It's a practice, much like the Stoics' daily reflections. By confronting ego regularly, you build a habit of humility and clarity. Holiday reminds us, the fight against ego is a lifelong one, but it's a fight worth waging. Every time you choose to listen, to learn, to let go of pride, you're choosing the Stoic path, a path of strength, purpose, and peace. As we close, let's hold on to one final Stoic insight from Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Ego will always be there, whispering its temptations, but you have the tools to silence it. Reflect on your actions, focus on what you control, embrace humility, practice discipline, and love your fate. These are the keys to a life where ego no longer rules. So, take out that pen, start that exercise, and begin taming your ego today. The journey to greatness isn't about defeating others, it's about defeating the enemy within.